everyone, my name's Emma. Today we are talking about Seapsiracy, which is a Netflix original. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make with more intention will help us create the world that we want to live in. That's what we talk about here on this channel. How can we learn lessons from everything around us and apply that into our own lives? We're talking about Seapsiracy today, but in our next video, we're going to be talking about Aquamarine and A Cinderella Story and how two of my favorite childhood movies actually connect to what's going on in the oceans. Seapsiracy covers what is going on in marine animal agriculture. Now, if you've heard of Cowspiracy, it is a very similar kind of documentary where it goes into different organizations that are supposed to be protecting the land, protecting animals against climate change. And once the main orator of the documentary goes around and sees what's going on, he realizes that actually a lot of the organizations that claim that they're doing the best they can for climate change are not really doing it. So that is kind of what Seapsiracy goes over into the same kind of detail. And I really want to start off with saying some differences in land animal agriculture and marine animal agriculture and why one is more destructive and how they're actually both connected to one another. So in land animal agriculture, there is a variety of animals that are brought into this world to be killed for human consumption, but a majority of them are not animals that are serving some part of an ecosystem. These are usually domesticated animals, animals that have pretty much been outbred any kind of instincts as much as possible so that they can be raised in these kinds of conditions. Killing a pig in animal agriculture industry is not the same as taking a pig that lives in the natural world and forcing it to live in those conditions and then killing it, which is what aquaculture really is. Aquaculture is, for most of the time, salmon or some other type of fish like that are forced to live in very concentrated parts of the ocean, and then these sea animals are brought up in that kind of way. So taking those animals out of the ecosystem that very much depends on them is a great deal more harmful. And land animal agriculture actually contributes to the devastation of ocean animal agriculture because of the fact that over 500 dead zones have been caused because of the excess nitrogen being released into the oceans due to the amount of waste from these animal farms. So that is really where those two are connected. Both are destructive to the planet, and avoiding both is important, and choosing to not consume animals is the best that you can do for the planet from whatever direction you look at, but that's really a big point in how they're connected. So just wanted to touch upon that. And that's really what aquaculture is, which they also go into the documentary, and they really show the conditions that these salmon live in. They're forced to constantly swim around in these cages, and there's a great deal of lice, of sea lice, of different types of diseases, including diseases that are present in humans. And a great reason why a lot of these diseases in humans are becoming worse and worse is because a lot of antibiotics are also fed to aquaculture animals. So 80% of all antibiotics are fed to animals, which is why when humans get certain types of viruses or diseases, they become superbugs, and the drugs that we have to counteract what is happening within the human body due to those viruses or diseases or something that can inhabit, that can be cured with different antibiotics, oftentimes are not actually be able to work. And that's because a lot of it is fed to animals, because they're the ones who are exposed and where these viruses really replicate and affect a lot of people. So that was a big part of the documentary in the later half, but the documentary really starts out with him saying how much he loves the ocean and how much he wanted to capture the beauty of the ocean. He was inspired by Jacques Cousteau and Sylvia Earle did show up later in the documentary, and her own documentary, Mission Blue, is on Netflix, so you can check that one out as well. But he realizes that there's a lot of plastic, and he starts a journey where he wants to reduce plastic consumption. So he switches from using single-use plastics to reusables, and then on this journey he starts to realize what he had no idea about the industry, and how fishing is actually not a great industry, and that sustainable fishing doesn't actually exist because of the fact that so much of it cannot be tracked. The oceans are very much something that we cannot get access to and that we can't really keep track of. And a lot of dolphins, whales, sharks are killed in the process. So he begins his journey and he goes to different parts of the world and he looks at whale hunting, dolphin killings, and turtle killings, and how shark killings, and how all of these are really connected to the devastation that the commercial fishing industry creates. And a lot of the times when we think about fishing, a lot of people say, well, we need to consume fish. It's really important. And a lot of people depend off of fish, of consuming fish. And how can we tell those people not to consume it? And the documentary went into one of these areas in West Africa where the locals depend on fishing for their sustenance, and they see commercial fishing industries going in and pulling out so much fish that there's almost nothing left for the locals. So if we actually want to support the locals who depend on fishing, we should choose to not consume commercial fishing, and that we should be very wary of where our stuff is coming from. And that when we realize how many people are affected by choices and decisions that we make, we can start to make better ones. And so the documentary goes into these different aspects, and a majority of the people who are forced to live and work on these commercial fishing industry ships are forced there through human trafficking, through slavery. A lot of them are there against their will. They're forced to work in hazardous conditions, and a lot of the time when people go missing, it's because they're thrown overboard and nobody sees or hears from them again. So we can talk about not consuming animals, and we should, but there's also this very important and real factor of how humans are being affected by the fact that people are choosing to continue to consume animals. So if we actually want to care about human rights and human perspective, human emotions, the human truth, we need to realize how animals, human and non-human, are connected explicitly, and that anytime we try to hurt one, we ultimately hurt the other. And so that is also true to land animal agriculture. Those who are forced to work in slaughterhouses, who are forced to live next to where these farms exist, whether it be on the ocean or on land, are people who have less ability to live in better places. They are the ones who have less access to resources and oftentimes are considered the minority population, specifically in America. And largely, the most vulnerable populations in the world are forced to live in these conditions. So Seapsiracy really dove into quite a few of these topics, not as much as some of the other ones. And then they also went into how a lot of these top organizations that are claiming to certify that there was no dolphins killed when these fish were pulled out of the ocean are actually just lying. And that there's no real way to be able to distinguish. And then oftentimes it's all the same industry. Same industry that wants to protect dolphins, the same industry that is pushing for more animals, marine animals, to be killed. And though plastic is such an important part of what's going on, a lot of the times 50% of the plastic in the ocean is fishing gear. And this fishing gear is designed to trap and to kill marine animals. So oftentimes, it's not just plastic in our oceans, but the plastic fishing gear is forcing people to just throw it overboard because they're in the middle of the ocean. They think, well, no one's going to notice, no one's going to know. And then these nets that are designed to kill animals trap a lot of animals in them. So there's no way to know which animals are being killed, which animals are not. And then there's the expansion to whale killings, to shark killings, dolphin killings, sea turtle killings. And of course, there's many marine animals, but these are the ones that people usually gravitate towards and relate to and enjoy. And those are being killed by the fact that we are able to choose to buy fish, to buy salmon, to get sushi. And there's this brand new industry that's coming out called plant-based seafood. And you can check those out and choose to not bring animals onto your plate. Veganism is something that is much more than an act of eating or not eating. It is an active choice to align your actions to your morals, to the way you want the world to be, to the way you see the world, yourself in the world, to actively acknowledge and accept that, you know what, this isn't what I want to do anymore. that no amount of taste could supersede the need to align myself with the plight and the right for humans to live in a way that they are free from exploitation, oppression, and harm. And every choice we make that is in alignment with the opposite, we are directly going against what our core values say and what we believe, and we can't do that anymore. Not if we want to sustain life on Earth. The oceans are very close to being in a place where there's no more fish, where there's no more animals, there's no more marine animals to sustain the ecosystem. 80% of the breaths that we take come from the ocean. And if we treat it as if it's just this dumping ground and this place to pull as many marine animals as we can out of it, we're going to lose the oceans. And if the oceans die, so do humans. And we need to be aware of that. We need to continue to understand that what is happening is something that has happened because we have decided for it to happen. You can choose to never consume marine animals again. You can choose to never consume land animals again. And if you say, well, I can't do that, I can't do this, well, it's a lot easier to argue about this when we live on a planet that can still sustain life. It'll be much harder in 20 years to be able to say, well, I need to do this. There's going to be no fish. And if there's no fish, there's no human life as well. And climate change is something that is affecting humans. We can say we're trying to save the environment, but we're actually trying to save the humans. The environment will be fine, even if a majority of all animals were extinguished. A majority of the world is now considered gone. The planet would be able to come back from it. Some species would survive, and then this process of evolution would continue. And humans would be one of the species that die out completely. And we cannot let that happen. We are trying to save the people. And to save the people, we have to save the animals, to save the oceans, and save the humans, because so many humans are being exploited when marine animals are being exploited. The exploitation of one cannot occur without the exploitation of the other. So I hope you check out Seapsiracy. There's a lot of important information, a lot of imagery in it that is very stark, that is very important to see and to realize what's happening, because we can't continue this way that we're on. It's just not worth it. So hope you got something out of today's video. Tune in next time, where we're going to be talking about aquamarine and a Cinderella story, and how they hinted at things are changing for the better and maybe for the worse if we don't continue to change. I hope to see you soon, but until then, have an amazing day.